Oh, I love a great story in rock and roll, and this one's good. Today's legendary band killed it in the 70s, man. Then they faltered in the early 80s. Everybody thought they were done. Then they made one of the biggest comebacks in rock history in the late 80s, and then they leveled up in the 90s with 3 massive #1 hits. That all kind of sounded like the same song with different lyrics. So let's go behind the scenes and investigate a rich time for this rock band. You're going to find everything from song-doctored singles to music video muses. We'll listen to the 3 huge hits and, they have different titles, but did the band rip themselves off several times over? We're going to find out on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. If music is your bag and you want the stories behind the songs straight from the legends, the artists who created them, make sure that you subscribe below right now. You'll dig this community and the nostalgia that takes you back to the good old days. And also make sure to check us out on Patreon for even more videos and exclusives. After years of excess and substance abuse, Aerosmith's career made a remarkable resurgence in the late 80s. Thanks in no small part to the band's determination to get clean. You got to give Aerosmith their props. The collective efforts of Steven Tyler on vocals, Joe Perry and Brad Whitford on guitar, Tom Hamilton on bass, and Joey Kramer on drums turned things around after it looked like all was lost. All this led to an impressive and increasingly successful second act for Aerosmith's career. Really one of the greatest second acts for a band in history. Take a look at the numbers. 1987's Permanent Vacation, that went to number 11 on the US Billboard 200. And 1989's Pump went to number 5. Singles from those 2 albums made incredible chart showings. For example, Lovin' an Elevator went to number 5 on the Hot 100. Janie's Got a Gun reached number 4, and Angel climbed to number 3. Amazing. But cleaning up wasn't Aerosmith's only prescription for success. Along the way, they got quite a few house calls from song doctors who helped them polish their music for mass consumption. While the entirety of 1985's Done With Mirrors was written by Boston's Bad Boys alone, a new songwriting dynamic emerged thereafter with Permanent Vacation, which crediting only 4 tracks solely to the band. And as for Pump, the number was 6. A little higher there. That means roughly half the tracks from Aerosmith's late 80s renaissance benefited in part from someone else's vision. And when the guys got back in the saddle again for 1993's Get a Grip, they put together an even more robust collection of collaborators, if you will, which once again proved extremely effective. 4 more Hot 100 hits and 5 top 5 singles and a number 7 smash on the US mainstream rock chart. It was a tactic that clearly worked for Aerosmith. A secret weapon during the span of 1987 to 1994, the band released a total of 21 singles, and out of those, a staggering 17 were written or co-written by songwriters who didn't go by the name of Aerosmith. Right after Pump was released, Sony approached Aerosmith with a massive $30 million deal. Not surprisingly, the band signed on the dotted line. Who wouldn't? But before Aerosmith could get underway, they still had unfinished business with their current label, Gephart. They would need to turn out one last record. However, writing and recording Get a Grip would be a protracted struggle. In January of 1992, the band joined producer Bruce Fairbairn in LA at Hollywood's A&M Studios. There for 3 months, Aerosmith worked up a couple new songs. When Gephart A&R exec John Collaborators turned up to listen to those tracks, he didn't hear a single. Tyler remembers the executive saying, "It's not as good as Janie. Do you have a Janie on there?" Not surprisingly, Collaborators' assessment pissed off the band. Steven went off the deep end, calling John every name in the book, and Joe, he smoldered in silence. Now, after things cooled down, Steven and Joe discussed the situation, and they decided that they needed a change of scenery. So they migrated north to Little Mountain Sound in Vancouver, British Columbia, the recording site of their previous 2 albums. Still, things didn't get any easier. Part of the problem was Stephen's aversion to writing lyrics. Perry remembered how difficult it was to get his bandmate to do the deed. He described the following interaction between singer and producer. Here we go. Bruce Fairbairn. He would say, "Go to Studio D and write your lyrics." Stephen, "I'm listening to guitar parts at Studio A." Bruce, "You don't need to listen to guitar parts. You need to write your freaking lyrics." Didn't say that, said something else. "Stephen, I'm not a machine." Bruce, "I don't need you to be a machine. I need you to be a writer. Write." Not that conversations like this were all that helpful. According to Joe, the more success Stephen achieved, the less he would focus on writing lyrics. Still, Perry sympathized with Steven Tyler, who hated not being in the room when tracks were cut. So he could do what he could to assist his procrastinating partner, spending time with him in Studio D, playing his guitar parts, throwing out ideas, and trying to coax some lyrics out of Stephen. Ultimately, the trip to Vancouver, it accomplished very little. But later that summer, when Aerosmith convened at Perry's home studio, affectionately called the Boneyard, things actually started to move along a little bit there. The newfound momentum that came not only from a more relaxed workspace, but also from an additional cast of characters. John Kalodner, who I mentioned before, probably at his wit's end, he arranged for some so-called song doctors and outside collaborators to polish up the tracks. Joe Perry didn't mind. He liked working with new writers who brought fresh ideas to the table, especially when it came to the lyrics. I can only imagine Tyler was a little bit relieved as well. Joe said the process was pretty simple. He and Stephen would start riffing on ideas before inviting somebody in. Then they'd give each writer a couple of days to work with them. If magic was in the air, the collaboration continued. If not, they'd just move on to someone else. As I mentioned earlier, Get a Grip had a lengthy list of contributors, so let me catch you up to speed. One familiar face was Desmond Child, a professional songwriter who wrote tracks for Kiss, Bonnie Tyler, Cher, Joan Jett, Alice Cooper, co-wrote Living on a Prayer, Bon Jovi, of course. Child had also already worked with Aerosmith on several songs. For Get a Grip, he worked on Flesh and Crazy. And in fact, Perry and Child actually started Crazy around the time that they penned Angel. But Aerosmith wanted to spread out their ballads so that they didn't come off as, too soft. Also making an appearance on Get a Grip were two damn Yankees. There was Tommy Shaw, originally from Styx, and Jack Blades of Night Ranger fame. They contributed to a couple of tracks, Shut Up and Dance and Can't Stop Messin'. That would land on the international version of the album. Lenny Kravitz also showed up at the Boneyard, camping out in an RV for quite a while. Joe called Lenny a great guy and a true artist. Together they came up with Lineup. The list continued on and on and on. There was Bryan Adams' partner Jim Valens. He left his mark on 3 tracks, Eat the Rich, Get a Grip, and Boogeyman. Mark Hudson contributed to Living on the Edge and also Gotta Love It. Taylor Rhodes co-wrote Cryin. And longtime Aerosmith friend Richard Supa, he helped with Amazing. The only 2 tracks exclusive to Aerosmith that were, Tyler Perry combo were Fever and Joe Perry's Walk On Down. Fever. Now, when journalist Alan DePerna later pointed out, this large crowd of co-conspirators on Get a Grip, Steven Tyler responded, "So sue me." As someone once said, if this was easy, everybody would be doing it. True enough. Songwriting, of course, isn't easy. But when you look at just how many writers were brought in to polish off that album, I think that at least warrants a raised eyebrow. After all, when you go back to some of the most memorable hits from Aerosmith's 70s catalog, they were all penned by Steven Tyler and other band members. It's obvious that all by themselves, Aerosmith has written some of the greatest songs to ever grace radio in any format. So you have to ask what changed. Diving a little deeper, as we do that, I do want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the glasses I always wear on the show. My experience with Zenni over the last 2 years has been nothing short of phenomenal. I have 15 pair, picked them all out myself. I tried them all on by using their mirror feature so I could see how I looked before I purchased. And then I just put in my prescription, I put in my address, and they delivered them straight to me. Do it today at Zenni.com. You'll love it. After a lot of stressful months, Get a Grip was finally released on April 20th of 1993. It came out in an era, of course, being dominated by grunge. It's all over the airways. Alternative rock was the rising generation's rock music of choice, along with hip-hop. That was also making noise. Critics didn't give Aerosmith much a chance in this musical climate, arguing that they were long past their prime. However, the band were so masterful at adaptation. They knew how to promote themselves. They appeared on MTV, late night television, and everywhere else an alt-rock fan might go to find music. Not only did they stay relevant, but many younger fans who knew little of their 70s pedigree actually thought they were cool. Aerosmith's momentum at this time was undeniable, so much so that Get a Grip became their first album to reach #1 on the Billboard 200. You think about that for a second. That's amazing. It dominated the airwaves and MTV, and by the end of 1995, it had sold 7 million copies in the US alone. This is in the middle of the changed musical landscape. To kick their comeback into high gear, Aerosmith released a barrage of singles that did well on both the US mainstream rock chart and the Hot 100. On the rock charts, Eat the Rich went to #5, and Living on the Edge went to #1. After that came 3 big ones: Cryin, Amazing, and Crazy. This trio of power ballads no doubt drove album sales through the roof. On the rock charts, Cryin went to #1, Amazing went to #3, and Crazy #7. All of them made strong showings on the Hot 100 as well, and they were effectively tied together by the so-called Aerosmith Chick trilogy. In the years since, more than a few people have joked that all 3 are pretty much interchangeable. Now, remember when I said Aerosmith didn't want to put too many ballads on an album? This is probably why.
You get over 20 smash Aerosmith hits, all on one album. And as a bonus, you also get Aerosmith.
Saturday Night Live took these guys to task. I mean, you have to admit, that's freaking funny. The SNL skit, really hilarious. I dare say the members of the band likely laughed at it as well.
So, Joe, what do you think about our new greatest hits album? It's crazy amazing, man.
Yes, Cryin parts 1 through 3 do have some similarities, starting with their, one-word titles. 2 of them start with CR, 2 rhyme internally, and 2 end in ING, or almost do. And maybe if you say them out loud fast enough, they even start to sound alike, like the skit shows here.
Amazing, crazy, Cryin, it's amazing.
Cryin, Crazy, Amazing, Crazy.
But really, there isn't much to this. I mean, they all sound like Aerosmith doing a ballad. And who else are they supposed to sound like? If you're following that tangent, You may as well throw Angel and What It Takes into the mix too. Although those two are more different. I love What It Takes. Great song. Maybe the biggest reason these songs feel so interconnected is thanks to a pre-clueless Alicia Silverstone, who starred in all 3 music videos and became one of the most famous video vixens of all time, without even really trying. Cryin. Cryin, of course, came first, and although Alicia had already appeared in the feature film The Crush, for most of the world, this was the actress's introductory role. Just as soon as Cryin hit MTV in the summer of '93, it was clear that Alicia was the new rock and roll muse. Cryin bagged several awards at the 1994 MTV Video Music Awards, and it really got things rolling for Aerosmith. Said Alicia, Aerosmith made a hell of a lot of money off that video. Their sales tripled or something. They would have been crazy not to ask me back. She's pretty confident. So, of course, they did. The second installment, Amazing, is a song about climbing back to the top after you've hit rock bottom. The third video, Crazy, that hit MTV rotation in the spring of '94, with Alicia Silverstone returning for the final act. In this third installment, she continues her rebellious streak, taking it to the next level. But this time with a new partner in crime, Steven Tyler's daughter, Liv. Crazy was Get a Grip's second Grammy winner, taking home Best Rock Performance by a Duo or Group with Vocal. The video, of course, received heavy rotation on MTV and became one of the most requested videos of '94. How much credit should we give to players outside of Aerosmith for Get a Grip's success? I mean, when you look at the long list of songwriting collaborators, some of them well known for their hit writing prowess. And then if you add to that, Alicia Silverstone's presence on MTV in those videos, you really have to wonder if the album would have been as successful without those two things. So how much of 90s Aerosmith is actually Aerosmith? Well, it depends on which members of the fan base you ask. I know fans who hate everything released after Pump with a passion. Some who are more forgiving, but still maintain that Aerosmith lost their way in that second act and gave too much creative control to outsiders or didn't contribute enough. Everybody has a different opinion. No matter what the answer is, there is no doubt that Aerosmith's greatest songs were from the 70s. Dream On, Sweet Emotion, Walk This Way, Toys in the Attic, so many more. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure that one out. These are some of the greatest songs of all time. And their output in the 80s was good too. Janie's Got a Gun, great song. Dude Looks Like a Lady, Lovin' an Elevator, What It Takes. Which are more or less written by the band, with a few exceptions. I have mixed feelings about Get a Grip, but please don't even get me started on I Don't Want to Miss a Thing. Leave us a comment about Aerosmith and the Alicia Silverstone trifecta. What do you remember about Cryin', Amazing, and Crazy, or Crazy, Amazing, Cryin'? Do you think they sound like the same song? What about Get a Grip? What do you make of so many outside songwriters? Living on the Edge is a good song, actually. Yeah. Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this episode, check out our other Aerosmith installments from 70s standards like Sweet Emotion and Dream On to the 80s hit Janie's Got a Gun. We got you covered. I love Aerosmith, don't get me wrong. They're great. And Get a Grip is a good album. Anyway, help us keep the music alive. Subscribe below. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth.